A few weeks ago, my daughter Amanda sent me a video of my granddaughter Chloe. And she had Chloe sitting at the kitchen table, and it was a coloring book, a book of some sort that had lots of different pictures in the book. And so Amanda had told Chloe, said, I want you to circle everything that you want for Christmas. So Chloe is 3 years old. She's going through this, and she's circling just about everything, except there was one item on the book that wasn't circled. And so my daughter asked her, said, Chloe, don't you want that one for Christmas? You didn't circle that. And Chloe said, oh yeah, I want that one too. And she drew a big circle around it. Now, that makes for a really cute video of a 3-year-old, but I'm afraid it is all too descriptive at times of the way many adults feel. We want it all. What I have is never enough. I want more, and I want it all. Today we're kicking off a new series for the month of November. I've titled this series Toxic Tudes. We're going to look at attitudes that keep us from being thankful. That's what November is all about, right? Being thankful. But we often arrive at the fourth Thursday of November and we find it tough to be thankful because the rest of the year we've lived with attitudes that prevent us from experiencing genuine thankfulness. Well, today we're going to look at an attitude that I believe fuels and feeds a lot of the things that drive us and a lot of the messes that we find ourselves in. This attitude drives us into car leases we wish we could get out of, to buy more house than we need, to get that thing we're not sure why we got it, but we got it, and now we don't know where it is, but we still owe money on it. This is the thing that drives people into credit card debt. So what is this thing? It's discontentment. Discontentment. Discontentment is the dissatisfaction I have with what I have. Dissatisfaction that you have with what you have. Now, dissatisfaction and discontentment is kind of related to envy. I would say it's like a cousin of envy. The definition of envy is when you resent what other people have, or you resent the blessings of God in other people's lives. Discontentment is when you ignore God's blessings in your own life. When you ignore God's blessings in your own life. Now, when we think about discontentment, we're usually referring to things like financial status and possessions. But you know, feelings of discontentment are also triggered by circumstances in our lives. You may be stuck in an unfulfilling job that you've become discontent with. Or perhaps you are widowed and you experience genuine discontent from living alone. Or perhaps a lack of contentment comes from, in some people, an inability to have children, or maybe from a physical disability that limits their mobility. Or maybe the discontentment is just coming from an ongoing health situation that's not improving. Or maybe you're in an unfaithful or unfulfilling marriage that's just not bad enough to end, but it no longer meets your emotional needs. And when you think of your marriage, feelings of discontent begin to rise to the surface. Now, no doubt there are other circumstances, painful circumstances that I haven't mentioned that cause discontentment in our life. And so we can be discontent with what we don't have or what we do have. We can be discontent because of our circumstances. And then sometimes we allow trivial matters to cause us to feel discontent. Now, discontentment is not seeing what God truly has given us and being content with that, being satisfied with that. You know, whatever circumstances cause those gnawing feelings of discontent, however legitimate we may think these feelings are, we need to recognize that discontentment is never God's best for us. This past week, I was in Northeast Indiana. And each year, you may know, I take a week in the fall and I get together with my colleague, a pastor in Ohio. We've been collaborating on sermons for 15, 20 years almost now. We get together to plan out our services, and we were really blessed. There was a family from Indiana who own this home, and it's a second home on a lake. It's just an absolutely gorgeous home, and they made this home available to both Tony and I, and they don't know either one of us, and we don't know them. We had a connection, and they were honored to have a couple of pastors come and plan out their preaching year, their preaching calendar for the next year. So we stayed at this home, and as I said, it was a gorgeous home, no doubt about it. But I don't know, it was the second day I was there. I stepped out into the backyard, and the backyard has this beautiful view of the lake. And I noticed there were a couple of other houses that had smoke rising from chimneys. And I thought, wow, it's a beautiful house, but we don't have a fireplace here. And then the house next door, which wasn't nearly as nice as this house, but it had a really, really nice deck. And I just kind of looked at the back and said, man, that's kind of flat. There's no deck on this house. And then if you look in the upper right corner picture, it's the garage that they converted into a game room. I mean, it's got a jukebox there, you could see. It's got a Pac-Man game. It's got a lot of cool stuff there. But you know, right in the middle of that, you know what looked good there? A pool table, because we wanted to play pool, and there was no pool table in this house. And then, you know, it has all these windows that you could look out onto this beautiful lake. But you see the window, the shade that's down? If I want to raise that shade, I actually have to get up and pull a string. I mean, I've seen remote control shades before, but you got to get up and pull the string. And you know what? Well, I'm just kidding about this kind of stuff. Here's the thing I really want you to see this morning. There's one word that I want you to remember throughout this message, because this is the root of discontentment. It's the root cause of discontentment. And the word is awareness. Awareness. See, I'm usually not dissatisfied with what I have until I become aware of what I don't have. And if we could somehow prevent ourselves from being aware of things we don't have, then we could possibly be rid of discontentment in our life. But we can't do that. We can't prevent being aware of things. But we can prevent what we do with that awareness. And we see this in a powerful way in the Old Testament book of Esther. Esther chapter 5. It's a great story we're going to look at, and we're going to spend about the first half of this message in Esther, and then we're going to spend the second half of the message in 1 Timothy chapter 6. But let me set the story up for you. It's ancient Persia, which today is modern-day Iran, and there is a government official, and his name is Haman. Haman is the most powerful government official in the empire, except for the king himself. He was sort of like the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, who is the highest-ranking military person. And in the same manner that military members all stand and respect and they salute the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff when they walk by, all the government officials in Persia had to bow down before Haman when he walked by to show him respect that his position demanded. But there was one person who refused to bow before Haman. He was a Jewish man named Mordecai. And his refusal to show proper respect to Haman absolutely and greatly angered Haman. One day, the king of Persia and Haman had attended an official government banquet. It was a dinner. And the scripture actually tells us that Haman had a good time that night. But then as he left, and he was happy when he left the banquet, he sees Mordecai sitting when he should be bowing before Haman. And this infuriated Haman. But wisely, Scripture tells us he restrained himself and went on home. Now that in itself could be a whole sermon where when you are infuriated, the wisest thing to do is restrain yourself and go on home. But that's not part of the sermon. That was free today, so there you go. Esther chapter 5, beginning at verse 9. Now Haman was a happy man as he left the banquet. I'm guessing that probably means he drank a little bit too much. But he was a happy man as he left the banquet. But when he saw Mordecai sitting, and the key there is sitting. When he saw Mordecai sitting at the palace gate, not standing up or trembling nervous before him, Haman became furious. However, he restrained himself and went on home. Then Haman gathered together his friends and Zeresh his wife, and he boasted to them about his great wealth and his many children. And he bragged about the honors the king had given him and how he had been promoted over all other nobles and officials. Then Haman added, and that's not all. Queen Esther invited only me and the king himself to the banquet she's prepared for us. And she has invited me to dine with her and the king again tomorrow. So this guy, he has it. Then he added, but this is all worth nothing as long as I see Mordecai the Jew sitting there at the palace gate. Haman had it all. He is rich. He is at the top of the ladder. He brags about the honors the king had bestowed upon him and how he had been promoted over all the other nobles and officials. He's got many children, so he's got a good family. But then he becomes aware of something. He becomes aware of Mordecai not bowing in his presence, of just sitting there. And he declares, but this is all nothing to me. All that God has blessed him with, all that he has is kind of just thrown out the window when he becomes aware of Mordecai. Mordecai's refusal to honor him. All this gives me no satisfaction. So Haman voices his discontentment with everything he has been blessed with because of something he saw. He ignored what he did have, and he focused on what he did not have that he wanted. Now, you and I, we need to understand the relationship between awareness and contentment. Because awareness fuels your discontentment. See, you're happy with where you are and what you have until you become aware of what others have that you don't have. I mean, you're happy with your house until one day you visit another house and you're like, whoa, wow. When you walk around this house and you think, I had no idea ceilings could be that high. Yeah, I had no idea kitchens could look like that. Check out those bathrooms. My whole bedroom could fit into that bathroom. And then you go home, and what do you feel like? Well, bummer, the ceilings in my home seem like they're 6 foot tall. My kitchen is ridiculous. My bathrooms are unsatisfactory. I mean, I don't have a huge glass shower with 3 shower heads. And something you were completely satisfied with, you become dissatisfied with because you became aware of something else. Now, this house illustration is a big extreme example, but you got to understand it happens with the small things. It happens with a lot of different things in our life where we're feeling content until we become aware of something else to be had. Here's what advertisers know. Our appetites will never be satisfied. They won't. Our appetites for more will never be satisfied. In fact, Proverbs 27:20 kind of says it when it says, human desire is never satisfied. Human desire is never satisfied. Ain't that true in life? When I got my first iPhone, it was probably 2009, 2010, I think. And when I got it, and I thought this was the greatest thing I'd ever owned. I mean, I was amazed at all the cool things that an iPhone could do and how cool I actually looked holding an iPhone. I mean, I liked it. Until a year later, when the next version of the iPhone came out. And all of a sudden, mine wasn't so cool any longer. In fact, I was beginning to feel like my phone was outdated and antiquated. And then a friend of mine got an iPhone 10. And immediately my iPhone 8 was no longer tolerable. I had to get a 10 as well. And so I upgraded to an iPhone 10. It's what I have right now. And when I first got it, I got to tell you, I was amazed by the iPhone 10. What a better phone it was than the 8. In fact, I think it was the coolest phone ever. But here's my problem. The iPhone 12 is now out. And it's got 5G. And it's got 3 camera lenses on the back of the phone. And it's got a much faster processor. Now, listen, the iPhone 10 is adequate, but it's not the iPhone 12. So I can start thinking, why me? Why do I have to be in a position in life where I am stuck with just the iPhone 10? I mean, there are other people that have iPhone 12s. You see, our discontentment is always fueled by a desire for bigger, newer, cooler, faster, and shinier. And those things are all appetites that will never be fully satisfied. So no matter what you have that's appetite-oriented, our appetites are never satisfied. So we have to begin planning out how we can get these things that we now so desperately want. See, the truth is, the more you feed an appetite, the bigger it gets. The more you get, the more you want. See, appetites only shrink by depriving them. Now, we're going to go through 1 Timothy chapter 6, and often I will read through a whole section and at one time, and then we'll make 3 points that apply, and I'll refer back to the text. But today we're going to do things a little bit differently. What I want to do today is I'm going to read through the whole, through it just one verse at a time and kind of make comments after each verse, because there's some really good stuff in here that I want to unpack for you. So 1 Timothy chapter 6, verse 6 begins this way. Yet true godliness with contentment is great wealth. True godliness with contentment is great wealth. Now, how does society define great wealth, or great gain, I believe is the NIV translates it? Well, I guess I would define great wealth as having more than I ever possibly will ever need. I mean, I think that's someone who's wealthy. When you have more than you're ever going to possibly need, you're really wealthy. But Paul, in his letter to Timothy, he redefines for us what great wealth is, or what great gain is. He said great wealth is actually godliness and contentment combined, put together. Then let me unpack that for you. Godliness is what? Godliness is being godlike, becoming more and more like our Creator. Contentment, of course, is being satisfied with what you have. I'm good with what I have. And so the way the Bible describes great wealth is being godly and content. It is merging together. It is packing in the same suitcase godliness and contentment, because they go hand in hand. See, great wealth, great gain is so much more than stuff. From a biblical perspective, you are wealthy when you are godly and you are content. That's how the Bible defines wealth. So much different than the way we would define wealth. A biblically wealthy person is someone who is living a godly, godlike life and is content, is satisfied with what they have, because they know what they have has been given to them by God. That's a wealthy person. Verse 7 says this. After all, we brought nothing with us when we came into the world, and we can't take anything with us when we leave it. Isn't that true? Isn't that true? You know, if wealth was defined as stuff and bank accounts, when we enter into eternity, we're all going to enter it broke, because you aren't taking any of that stuff and any of those bank accounts with you. It stays here when we go there. So when we go there, If wealth is in terms of possession and money and stuff, we'll be broke when we get there. And you're going to be broke for eternity. It's a long time. But when wealth is defined as godliness combined and merged with contentment, we get to take that with us into eternity. So when we leave here and we get there, we're hugely wealthy because we've invested and we've lived a godly life and we've been content. See, it's all a matter of how we look at things and our pursuit of things and their relationship to the many priorities in our life. Now, Paul says in verse 8, we will be content if we have enough food and clothing. Now, I look at that and say, whoa, that's one verse I probably will never completely live out in my life, to be content with just food and clothing. But Paul's saying, I just don't want to get all tied up in stuff. If I have something to eat and something to wear, I'm good, I'm content. But that's very difficult. I understand for you and I to say that. But you know what? When you get into a habit of feeding your appetite with bigger and newer and better, you know what happens to your appetite? It gets bigger. It doesn't diminish. It just gets bigger, and your appetite begins to demand more than what you might be able to provide. Look at verse 9. But people who long to be rich fall into temptation and are trapped by many foolish and harmful desires that plunge them into ruin and destruction. See, Paul's telling Timothy, people who want bigger and better and newer and fancier, they all fall into this trap. Everyone who wants to live richer than they live right now and where their place in life is, they will fall into this trap. This trap that we need bigger and better and faster and newer. And it's a trap. We get trapped into paying off things we convinced ourselves we had to have. And now we regret it because those payments are really draining us. Well, Paul continues when he says this about money in verse 10. For the love of money is the root of all kinds of evil. And some people, craving money, have wandered from the true faith and have pierced themselves with many sorrows. Do you love money? You may say, of course not. I don't like it. I'd like to have more of it. But no, I don't love money. And I would say, yeah, you do. I want you to think about it this way. Remember the crazy things you and your spouse used to do when you were like first in love? Right? Especially if you were apart for any length of time. Susie and I, we were apart on several different occasions, a few months at a time during our dating relationship. One at the end of a summer, I think it was after my sophomore year of college, I flew back to Kentucky for my third year, and I flew back into Louisville, Kentucky. And Susie so desperately needed to see me that she took a bus from West Virginia to Frankfort, Kentucky, and then got a ride from someone we knew from Frankfort to the Louisville airport to meet me. Now, she would never make a trip like that today, I doubt. But this is what she did because, we had to see each other, and we were going to. And that also happened to be the day I asked her to marry me, so I guess it's good that we both were, we were going to make it. We were going to get together, and we were going to see each other and do what we had to do to be together that day. But I had her engagement ring safety pinned to the inside of my front pants pocket. I was so afraid I was going to lose this ring traveling. And in those days, it was 1981. You could, I guess, keep safety pins in your pocket when you get on a plane in those days. And so I had it pinned, and well, actually, it was my mother who pinned it to the inside of my pants pocket, but you get the whole point here. We do crazy things when we are in love. Have you ever done something stupid to get something you wanted? I have. How long does it take to convince yourself that you can afford this? That you need it? You deserve it, right? My daughter, Michelle, she drove the same car from her senior year in high school until she was 31. And I was really proud of her. You know, Michelle's kind of frugal, and so that was fine, and she kept driving. But time she was 31, she'd had this car for 13, 14 years, and it was time to replace the car. And so she just posted something on Facebook one day and said, hey, I've driven the same car since I was 18 years old. I think I deserve a new car. And everybody agreed with her. Who wouldn't agree with that? But then my sister replied, and she said something there that has stuck with me in the 5 or 6 years since this post. She said, honey, if you can't pay cash for it, you don't deserve it. You only want it. And I've thought about that a lot. And that has influenced a lot of my purchasing decisions in the last 5 or 6 years. How many times have you looked back on a financial decision you made and said, man, that was really stupid. Why did I do that? Why was I so dumb? We do stupid things when we are in love. And we need to admit it. We're in love with money and cars and phones and computers and houses and HD TVs. And when we're in love with things, we will do stupid things to get things. And you will jeopardize things that you know are important in your life, such as like financial stability or your marriage, for example. When you jeopardize important things to satisfy your appetite for things you don't need, you just want. That's how you know that you're falling in love with money. When I'm willing to sacrifice the good to get what I want, I'm in love with it. Why do you think most divorced couples point to money issues as the root cause of the problem in their marriage? See, if you don't get a handle on discontentment, it will wreck your most important relationships, including your relationship with your spouse or your family, certainly your relationship with God. You see, eventually the pursuit of whatever it is you are pursuing, because you think you will need it and you think it'll be a great gain in your life to have it, you're going to come to realize it wasn't such a great gain after all. So what's the solution? We live in a very materialistic time and country. What's the solution? Well, let's look at verse 11. But you, Timothy, are a man of God. So run from all these things, pursue righteousness and a godly life, along with faith, love, perseverance, and gentleness. Now I want you to see here, Paul's writing, he says, this is what people are like. People aren't content. They fall into traps. They do crazy things for money. And then he says, but Timothy, you're a man of God. You know what he's saying there? Timothy, you don't have to be like this. Timothy, you are a man of God. Don't be like the world who pursues stuff and more stuff and then more stuff. You are a man of God. You don't have to be like this, Timothy. And I believe God's saying that to each one of us today. You are a man of God. Don't be like that. You are a woman of God. Don't be like that. Doesn't have to be this way. You can be different from everyone else. You can redirect your passions. And notice Paul says, run from these things. Run from it. He's like, flee from it. Don't play around with it. You know, one other time at least I recall, where someone fled in the Bible, it's Joseph. Remember back in the Old Testament when he was enticed by Potiphar's wife, and the scripture says that Joseph fled. He ran from it. You know, that's what Paul is saying to Timothy here. When you are enticed by stuff, and when you are enticed and your appetite is growing for stuff, run from it, flee from it, get away from it. Let me ask you, would any of you be willing to get in a cage with a hungry lion and just say, you know what, I'll be careful? You can be careful all you want. You're still going to be that lion's lunch. Paul says, run from it, because the pursuit of things, the appetite for things, the unsatisfied, never final appetite for things is dangerous. It's dangerous. It's so dangerous that Paul says, don't stick around. Don't think about it. Don't consider it. Run. Flee. But here's the great thing about this. I want you to see this. Paul doesn't just say, run and flee and get out of there. He tells Timothy and he tells us that there is There is something much greater that we could pursue, that we could run to. What he's basically saying is, flee these things over here and pursue these things over here. Timothy, you are a man of God. Change the direction in your life. Change your pursuit. Be less aware of these things and more aware of these things. And so don't pursue this stuff. Instead, pursue righteousness over here and pursue a godly life over here. Pursue faith and pursue love and perseverance and gentleness. That's the stuff you need to be pursuing, Timothy, because you're a man of God. You know, though discontentment is usually perceived as a negative, it can also actually be used as a positive. It can be leveraged for our benefit. Maybe you've become, at one point, you are discontent with your marriage, or maybe your weight, or your financial situation. But that dissatisfaction caused you to make some positive changes in your life. I mean, change comes about often as a result of dissatisfaction and discontentment with the right things, with good things, with healthy things. We have a chance to fix it. We have a chance to change it. We're not satisfied with what is broken. So good things can actually come out of discontentment and dissatisfaction. The shift we need to make is that we be discontent with things in our life that are good and beneficial for us. And we let that discontentment motivate us to make positive changes. See, if you're going to be discontent in life, be discontent with your faith. Be discontent with the love that you show to others. Be discontent with your ability to persevere through difficult challenges. Be discontent with your gentleness with people. Be discontent with your faith. Be discontent with your godlike living. And let all of that discontentment motivate you to pursue godliness. So instead of pursuing stuff, pursue something else. Instead of being discontent with where you live or how you live or what you have and don't have, be discontent with your knowledge of the Word of God. Be discontent with your prayer life. Be discontent with your godly character. You see, when we pursue the right things, when we make our priority in life being godly, we'll be discontent with things we should be discontent with. So here's your takeaway today. As I starve my sinful discontentment, and remember, appetites only shrink when they're starved. When I starve my sinful discontentment, I must feed new holy appetites and redirect my pursuits. See, I need to take the pursuit of this and I need to pursue this instead. Because if you just say, I'm going to stop pursuing all this stuff, I'm just going to stop pursuing it, you won't. Because here's the thing, we are created, it's in our DNA to pursue things. That's just who we are. And we're either going to pursue things of the world that turn out to be dangerous and will cause us to do stupid things and cause us to do unethical things and immoral things so we could have more money, so we could buy more and more of that stuff that never satisfies us. Or we can pursue godly things and do what God calls us to do. See, when we redirect our discontentment to good things, you know what happens? Look at verse 18 and 19. Tell them to use their money and do good. They should be rich in good works and generous to those in need, always being ready to share with others. By doing this, they will be storing up their treasure as a good foundation for the future, that they may experience true life. See, pursue good. Pursue generosity instead of stuff. Be discontent with the amount of good work you do for others. Be discontent with your level of generosity. Allow that discontentment to motivate changes in your life. Because you know what will happen? When you prioritize godliness and godly characters, all of a sudden, you're going to become aware of the needs of others around you. It's not going to be all about you, what you have and what you don't have. But you're going to be aware of what others have. You know, after first service today, a gentleman that attends our church, but I know his money is almost impossibly tight for this gentleman. And he's had some health issues and he needed some medicine, but can't afford it. And I thought to myself, after preaching this sermon, I just said, can you hold on? Could you just hang around here for about a half hour? I said, I'll be back. And so I went to Walgreens and I bought him what he needs. And man, doing something like that, I'm just so content with where God has me in life that when I need some medicine, I don't have to worry about how I'm going to pay for it, at least not yet. But it changes your awareness of what you don't have to what they don't have. And you know what? This is exactly how Jesus lived his life.